Hello there and good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. It is I, Mr. Warren Hayes, of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. You know the drill, but the drill is a little cuckoo crazy because it's a Sunday evening, and usually Mr. Warren Hayes doesn't come over screaming in your ears on a nice, calm Tuesday evening after you've had wonderful Sunday dinner with your family, perhaps some friends, close friends of the family, you know, the kind that you want over during these, these types of gatherings where everyone sits down, and you don't want your embarrassing friends, the guys who hang out at the pool halls on Friday night. No. Maybe that's the kind of evening that you've had. And I'm excited to have that type of evening tonight, talking about the G1 Climax 30 with my dinner guests, the people that I'd like to have around my dinner table, my spread. Come taste my spread. Anthony Suter and JPQ are two guys who've recently retired from podcasting. Them cunts, but say that lovingly.
I love that how there's so many innuendos that you didn't take a breath and I couldn't jump in as you talk about your spread and you don't come on this early as we talk about a show that has a climax.
I am so excited to have you guys on. That's the kind of situation I'm in right now. I'm just too hype about it. But I'm really, really glad to have both of you here. JPQ, of course, formerly of the No Particular Angle podcast, and Anthony Suter, formerly of Smart to Death. But it wouldn't be G1 season if I didn't talk to these guys here and start kicking it off. Still wrestling fans, still guys who are excited about what's coming forward with the GQ. I mean, I'm always excited to see who's on the cover of GQ, but as far as the G1 goes, that's what I'm most excited talking about. Well, first of all, what was it, John? How have you been doing, friend? How are things been hanging since you've hung up the mic?
The mic is hung, and that's good. It's one of those things where I'm doing well, Warren. I appreciate you reaching in and checking on me. It's been a minute or two, and we get to G1 season, and before I even have the opportunity to reach out about a potluck, you, my friend, put on a 3-course meal, bringing me and Anthony back out of retirement to talk to you one more time. Do this one more time as the Blazer Bros, talking G1 Climax. And I wouldn't do it with anybody else but you, pal. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, good sir.
I'm really glad you're here. Very, very glad you're here. Just as I'm happy that you're here as well, Anthony Suter, Smart to Death. Again, another podcast into the great annals of wrestling podcast history. I did say annals, and how's life been with you, Anthony? Fatherhood, career, sports, beverages.
Well, my morning started with my son waking me up at 8:30 in the morning as I found out today he could climb up his bassinet.
Oh.
And staring at me with and like, here's the thing: when you become a dad, you get woken up. Like, so before I got woken up at 8 in the morning from my friends calling me and being like, yo, dude, where the fuck is my car? Now it's just my baby being like, yo, dude, where's my meal?
Very real thing.
So it's not so different. It's not bad. I started doing sports podcasting, just transitioned over doing that. And the fact that I jumped back into wrestling podcasting 2 weeks after I said I wouldn't anymore just shows I would do anything else but watch the Dallas Cowboys play football.
How's that working out for you?
Yeah, I'm not watching the Dallas Cowboys play football. It's fantastic. I'd much rather talk about New Japan. JPQ gets it. He knows.
I'm with you, buddy.
Yeah.
So you're holding up. That's really cool. And it's very cool as well that there's a bunch of people who decided to join us live here this evening to watch the proceedings and enjoy them together. Joining us live in the chat, such as Tim Traver. How you doing, Tim? Good to see you. Robert Sterling as well. We've also got Throwback, who's in the chat. Good to see you. Pat. We've also have Anthony Suter, who's pulling double duty. I don't know. He's like on screen. He's in the chat. I don't know how he manages that stuff. Our friend Ben is here as well. Good to see you. Shane Richardson. And we also have Nick Wolf, who joined us and also dropped a super chat. Thank you very much, Nick, for that. And he says, if Lord Taichi isn't at least in the semifinals, I think wrestling was scripted.
Get him to the semis.
I mean, that could be a hashtag right there, right? Get Taichi to the semis. That's one I would not get behind. But hey, let's go right ahead. Let's start talking about the G1 because it's, I think, the best definition to someone who's an outsider to the G1 is to I think the best way to explain it is to call it a festival of wrestling, right? Because that's essentially what it is. We're getting a month of arguably the best matches that we're going to see all year. Because this is the time of year. I don't care if you're how tightly kept your match of the year list is. It is going to explode by the time we're done with the G1 when October rolls around, mid-October. This is the time of year where we really get the best matches out of any promotion in wrestling, bar none. And this year we're set again to not disappoint, guys. Because the two blocks this year are absolutely phenomenal. I think I don't know how much you can blame COVID for this one, because there's something special going on here. Let me just run down the blocks really quickly. On Block A this year, we have Kota Ibushi, Jeff Cobb, Kazuchika Okada, Tomohiro Ishii, Will Ospreay, Shingo Takagi, Minoru Suzuki, Lord Taichi, Jay White, and Yujiro Takahashi, the Tokyo Pimp, joins us as well. And Block B, we have Hiroshi Tanahashi, Juice Robinson, Hiroki Goto, Toru Yano, Yoshihashi, Two Straps, Tetsuya Naito, Sanada, Zack Sabre Jr., Kenta, and Evil. I think we got to start by talking about the big story here, and it's how stacked Block A is. Jonathan, we're going to start with you. I mean, both blocks are phenomenal. I think that right. I think we agree on that. But my God, there's something special about Block A.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody outside of Cobb has held an IWGP or Never championship since, at least in the last calendar year, but maybe even since January. Like, I'm looking through it now, and it seems as if, everybody but one.
Even our boy Yujiro?
Didn't he hold the trios earlier this year?
Oh, you mean, yeah. Okay. I thought you were talking like important titles. Okay.
Well, no. I just said IWGP and Never.
Okay.
Right? But it's good to see. I mean, that championship pedigree is important, right? Because it allows for random upsets, people that we don't expect to win, to pull up a quick W or a cheeky W or something along the lines to cause some upsets and intrigue later. Mm-hmm. I don't see a lot of parity here. I still think your heavy hitters are going to be at the top. I think maybe you see a little bit more beefiness in the middle than what we're accustomed to seeing. But really, I look at this and I say, for as much talent as there is, and there's a tremendous amount of talent in this block, mm-hmm. and we talked prior to, very debatable whether or not this is an all-timer as far as block goes. I still think coming out of this, interesting enough, at least in Block A, we're going to see kind of the cream of this block still rise to the top.
Anthony, what do you think about Block A in relation to Block B?
So the more intriguing matchups are definitely in Block A, right? Like who doesn't want to see, there is a conversation to be had about Will Ospreay being in this after everything that happened over the summer. Sure. But if we take that away, we just think about Ospreay versus Shingo last year. Who doesn't want to see that match? Who doesn't want to see them go at it again? See if they can duplicate what we saw at Best of the Super Juniors final last year. They can absolutely work really well together. If you're absolutely insane, if you don't want to see what Kota Ibushi and Jeff Cobb can do together, Okada and Ishii is always a good. Okada and Ibushi and Okada and Ishii is interesting. There's just a lot of really fun matches in here, and then you have Jay White to suck the soul out of every fun match. These guys can go on a streak.
Hang on a second. The Tokyo Pimp is in here as well, as far as sucking souls out of matches here.
Okay, but it's fun to see Takahashi get his ass beat. So there's still fun in that. Jay White is amazing and a great heel, and he will make sure that you don't enjoy him winning the matches that he wins, and he will get 6, 8, maybe 10 points. It's Jay White. We know that's what we're getting.
Jay White's getting 12, bro.
I mean, Jay White's got to be a favorite for this block. it's going to be a good time. And, two of these guys we haven't really seen, three of these guys we haven't seen in New Japan really because of the pandemic. So it's like a reset button, and A Block is a great way to do a nice little reset going forward to the end of the year to Wrestle Kingdom season.
Sure, absolutely. And we're going to get there really faster than in previous years. They had moved the G1 to the fall because of the Summer Olympics this year, to make sure that there wasn't going to be too much of a conflict there. But yeah, we're going to get to Wrestle Kingdom really, really quickly after this. But we've been, of course, we've been harping on Block A for the time being, but Block B does have the champ who's in there, Tetsuya Naito, both IWGP Heavyweight and Intercontinental Champion. That's not to be neglected. However, John, champions. I don't think in G1 history the reigning champion has ever won a G1. Correct?
No. So the reigning champion has not. And how fitting would it be for Naito winning, at the beginning of this year, and it's his redemption arc, and finally we can put that story behind us. And then he kind of goes through COVID year, because of course he does, right? It's like Moxley being a champion in the States.
Yeah.
And then we get to the point where now you can give him another accolade, and it's just one more thing to put on Naito, so people can continue to compare him to the greats like Okada and Tanahashi. It'll be interesting to see what they do. But yes, to answer your question, no, there has not been a IWGP Heavyweight Champion who has gone on to win the G1 Climax.
Since the New Japan Cup began, only since 2005, since the New Japan Cup, and you'll see since 2005, no wrestler has won both the Cup and the G1 in the same year.
Nope.
Right.
That's never happened up to date. So, Anthony, there's a lot of people who are sort of like breathing a sigh of relief and like, oh, thank God Evil's not winning again. Thank goodness. Okay, we can move on. But I mean, he's established himself as he's broken through a ceiling nonetheless. You'll never be able to take away the fact that he's been an IWGP champion, and that's probably how they're going to treat him nonetheless in Block B, right?
It does add some legitimacy to Block B, right? Like, you already have it with Tanahashi. You lose it with Juice, of course. Goto kind of brings you back a little bit. But Evil being there does give you the good storyline. I mean, you got the storyline in Block B with LIJ and former LIJ members in there. It's just a bummer because I feel like most of the matches that are in here in Block B we've seen several times. Well, and they're not necessarily ones that I care to see over and over
That's
again.
An excellent point. And just before we get to that, Throwback left us a super chat. Thank you very much, Throwback. He says, have a good show, guys. I'm listening to the show and watching the Cowboys game at the same time. So there you go, Anthony. He's got you covered on that, but he'll keep you abreast as to what's happening.
Can't wait.
Sorry, he's a Boston fan. He's not rooting for the Dallas.
I want to say hello to the First Lady of the MrWarrenHayes show, Kristen Ashley, who just arrived. How are you doing? But you pointed out something very, very interesting here that I did want to talk about. I jotted this down. Very interesting point. In Block B, there are only 3 fresh matches that we've never seen in here. Yano versus Kenta, which I'm absolutely looking forward to. Juice Robinson versus Yoshihashi, which I am absolutely not looking forward to. and Juice versus Kenta. Okay, those are the 3 matches that we've never had on Block B. Flip over to Block A. You have 14 first-time matches on Block A. And I'm not going to run through all of them because most of them, thank you very much, Shane, for the super chat.
Are you Jiro? 9 of them are you Jiro?
No, actually, 5 of them are with Cobb. Jeff Cobb has like 5 fresh matches here. We've got Suzuki versus Ospreay, which is new. Shingo versus Okada, which right? We're kind of like,
Sure. Shit.
Shingo versus Ibushi, we've never seen either.
That'd be fun.
Ospreay versus Ishii, if you want to believe that. That's never happened. But Takahashi does Yojiro Takahashi, the Tokyo Beam. He's got 5 as well. But Jeff Cobb also, he's at least 5. So I mean, John, that's to Anthony's point, that's really exciting stuff. Like, we've got, not only does Block A have the heavyweights, figuratively speaking, but also literally, but figuratively speaking, but then it's all going to be in these fresh matchups that we've never seen before.
I agree, except I don't think it's a bad thing. And I never really have. And I don't understand the narrative that we've seen these matches too many times. You can't have long story booking if you don't have matches that transcend years and years and years, right? So they have to meet up a couple times a year to make sense of that. And I will talk about that later when we get to a different aspect of this show. Here's what I like about Block B.
I'm glad that John has a structure to the show tonight.
I do.
I wish you would have shared it with me.
When you're retired, all you do is got time on your hands, Warren. So. But what I like about Block B is that it's the anchor of New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yes.
I've been pretty forward, pretty direct about how since they've come back from that COVID break, and picked up with the New Japan Cup and then Dominion and then the Summer Struggle leading to the G1, that's all kind of been a pivot.
Mm-hmm.
They're not focused on any of the storylines that they would have told, right? And they needed something to garner some interest, do some things that are different, get people reinvested back in wrestling, and whether that be the KOPW tournament, whether that be giving Evil a push because none of the Bullet Club leadership is around, you had to do some things that you're not accustomed to doing. That's what we see in Block A, right? Minus Evil, what we see in Block A is mid-card Okada. And is he still going to continue to be mid-card Okada? Are we getting the Rainmaker back? Is he going to get back on track, right? Jay White's coming back. You got Yujiro there if you decide to do somebody. Shingo wanted a death match at Summer Struggle. What's he going to do with these fresh matchups that we've never seen before? These are all the questions we have in Block A. Block B, well, we know what we're going to get, right? We're going to get the Ace versus Naito in a 3.5, 4-star banger classic that we're accustomed to seeing from New Japan Pro Wrestling. We're going to get Evil versus Zack Sabre Jr. in the last time that Evil was interesting to me as a wrestler, right? And that's fun. And that goes back a couple years. We're going to get Goto and Yano and champion Yoshihashi for the first time. And we're going to see them battle it out between each other, against one another. And can they make something out of the trios? Spoilers, they can't, because it's the trios titles. And Yoshihashi is a champion. But we have an anchor in Block B. And we're going to be reminiscent of what New Japan Pro Wrestling used to be and what they will be again by Wrestle Kingdom through Block B. And I think it's going to be more interesting than people give it credit for, although the matches will feel the same.
Yeah, I saw, and to circle back to when we started talking about it, I've seen that comment a couple of times, and it's clearly by people who've never really watched New Japan, who are like, why should we get hype at the same thing over and over year after year, Anthony? Why do we get hype if it's the same thing?
Well, I mean, listen, not to bring the other companies in here, but if you can consistently get on and watch the big North American shows, especially AEW, NXT, Raw, and SmackDown, I mean, you're watching the same shit over and over again on there too. The difference is we kind of get, in the major North American companies, we get the same matches over and over again with no storytelling. To John's point, New Japan tells stories through matches. We don't get backstage goofy segments. We don't get interviews and social, we don't get all that stuff. We get matches and backstage press conferences, and that is New Japan. And you can't tell a story to equate it to football. Football started today, right? Mm-hmm. You don't get storylines between teams. Why do I care about my Texans playing John's Eagles if we don't have any storyline? We don't have a history between each other. It doesn't really matter. I don't care about that game. Why does it really matter? But John's team is a rival of the Cowboys. They play twice a year every single year, and it's great. So, to John's point, the matches in New Japan being duplicates, it's a completely different thing. Evil, the last time he saw Evil versus Zack Sabre Jr. was when Evil was interesting to him. Maybe John is interested in Evil all over again after seeing Zack Sabre Jr. Maybe Yoshihashi in these matchups we've seen forever actually doesn't suck in these matches and is interesting to see. it's just different with New Japan the way they do it. They intentionally put these matches, and we don't have undercard matches this year, so it's okay to have some of these matchups that we see all of the time because we don't have undercard matchups, and we haven't seen them a lot.
That's right,
year.
and the
Fine.
Absolutely the only undercard matches that have been or that are going to be there are going to be Young Lion matches, who are essentially going to be having their own like mini unofficial G1 amongst themselves, right?
And they're so good too. It's crazy.
They're really good.
Yeah.
And I know he's not making the trip because of COVID, but why is Clark Connor still a Young Lion? Do we
Man,
know?
that's a great question.
Isn't that a good question though?
It's because they can't he can't get out of where he is and go anywhere to start the process. You know what I mean? Like he needs to go on excursion somewhere, but he can't go anywhere, you know?
So he can, I guess they have to keep him around maybe to shill cleaning products on Friday nights.
Hold on. Speaking of
why not?
excursions, completely off topic, where's Shota being kept?
That's a very good question.
Shota's in
Did
Rev
Moxley
Pro.
take him?
He's in Rev Pro.
He's in Rev Pro?
Yeah.
Okay. I was worried he was just like in the back in Jacksonville somewhere,
No.
held captive by Moxley.
No, he's in Rev Pro. That's
Or
where
in
he's doing
Mexico?
his
No,
excursion.
he's okay.
No, Ren Narita is at the
Oh.
LA dojo. Suji's back. Did someone go to CMLL? Maybe Ren did a quick tour down there, but I
feel like
think
he
he's
did.
with Ren. I think we're going to. Did he go to Ring of Honor?
Yeah,
Ren went somewhere. I know Ren's with the LA dojo, but I think he went somewhere else too.
All right. Well, they'll be around. They'll be around.
Yes.
So yeah. Let's start talking about the blocks individually. We're gonna just jump right in, start talking about it. Block A. We went through the contenders earlier. Kota Ibushi, last year's winner, is in this block. You'd be hard pressed to not consider him a favorite. Let's start with you, Anthony Suter, formerly of Smart to Death. You look at the lineup here, you see how things are going. Give us your gut. Who you got there as your early favorites here?
Well, we talked about New Japan Cup earlier this year, and I think we all talked about how we were wondering about Shingo. Would they pull the trigger on Shingo? They clearly are super invested in this guy. They've booked him really well. Shingo, to me, has to be the favorite out of the A block. I just think he's an interesting person to face off with whoever wins in the B block, especially if it's an LIJ member. You're going to see, like in the chat, we've already seen some people say they're picking Jeff Cobb. They're not putting Jeff Cobb over. I don't think any company that Jeff Cobb deals with right now is comfortable putting him in any kind of high profile situation because he's not committed to anyone anywhere. No. And he can commit to NXT, which is where I think he'll end up. He could end up in NXT any day, and then all of a sudden he finishes the G1. You've made him your winner, and then what does he do? Drop the briefcase before leaving Japan? Like you can't do that. So I've got to think it's Shingo is my favorite out of there. It's got Shingo or Jay White, man. That's where I see them going. I would love for it to be Taichi. Taichi's had a strong year. But yeah, I think I'm going with. I think Shingo's my favorite to win that block. I really do.
Look, I think there's a reason why they had Shingo drop the Never title before leading into the G1, because I was of the opinion that he was the glue. His work during the COVID era was the glue of New Japan. I don't think anyone worked as consistently and had better matches than he did on a regular basis as Never champion, or even before. No, actually, he won the title before going into COVID. So yeah, so there you go. I think he really held everything together. Hiromu as well. I think Hiromu Takahashi as well, but it's more maybe of his personality, his charisma. I think it's more on another. It's another playing field as far as what he was able to contribute during this period. Shingo, for me, this set off an alarm, and I was like, okay, because if you have a title in the G1, chances are you're not winning a block.
Yep.
And my God, I think that they might be ready to pull the trigger on Shingo Takagi, big time, top guy for the company. And I'm going to tell you what adds to the mystique of this. The final match of Block A on October 16, the main event is Minoru Suzuki and Shingo Takagi. So that to me means that match there is going to have implications for the finals. I really do. And so it kind of makes me think that they've got big plans for Shingo throughout the G1. John, your thoughts, please, on your gut feelings, or what we're talking about too. You know, you can talk about that.
Yeah,
too.
they're both good. I want to sit here and I want to say Jay White. Now, I come on the Mr. Warren Hayes show every once in a while, and the one thing that me and Warren do, besides bicker like the Golden Girls, is we fawn over our love for Jay White and how much we enjoy Jay White. And the fact that he's coming back and he's got a little competition with both Kenta and his leadership role in Bullet Club, as well as Evil, the up-and-comer, the newcomer to Bullet Club, and him taking the reins for a little while. It'll be interesting to see how Jay were to respond to win a block to be able to maybe see one of them in the final, and then where does the story go from there? I think it's a story worth telling. In my opinion, he's the best heel in the business, which means that he needs to be elevated as fast as possible back to where he was prior to COVID. This type of tournament does that. However, there's another person who won last year, who has kind of had an interesting ride so far this year, right? He's the fourth of the fourth in the Double Dash champion for the gold at Wrestle Kingdom, right? He had the poorest performances, one could say, finishing in fourth place, and then he goes on to win the tag team titles, only to lose them to Zack Sabre Jr. and Tai Chi, and his tag team partner just so happens to be on the other side, who won the G1 2 years ago. And there's been this little senpai-kohai type of ace relationship between the two of them. And my hope is, again, in the effort of trying to get things back on track, that they continue with that story. I'm willing to be patient with Jay White. I think that because of how good he is on the mic and how entertaining he is, that he'll be able to get back into the main event picture pretty quickly here. For my dice, though, I want to see Kota Ibushi win this block. I want the stigma of the G1 and Kota Ibushi finally be put to bed. Not because he won one, but because he can go back and he can win a block the following year. I want that story for him. I want him to be cemented as a New Japan guy even more moving forward. And then we'll see what comes out of Block B and who he faces. And I think that's where I'm leaning right now.
I like the idea of Jay White this year, them giving him a bit of a different story, though, because Jay White has always been about Bullet Club shenanigans, right? It's always been about
it's like he loses a couple early and then he goes on a streak to finish very strong,
right,
like white hot towards the end.
And I kind of feel like they can't. I kind of feel like this is what they're going to lean into, like the heavy Bullet Club influence. I think they're going to lean into that with Evil, especially if you consider how the main event of Summer Struggle went on. I think that's probably going to be maybe something that they're going to push harder in, but for Evil. I'd be cool to see like I wouldn't, you can't call him a straight shooter because it's Jay White, but but I don't see necessarily him going down a route where he's all out cheating and there's tons and tons of Bullet Club interference. I feel like the next step for Jay White has to be more serious competitor, getting shit done, Jay White in the ring, as opposed to. But I'm just going to throw this out here to both of you. How would that even be possible? Because Jay White's personality is so slimy and conniving and contriving. That's his thing, right?
The the way you do it is you keep Gato with Evil, and you let Jay White wrestle solo, and that'll take care of a lot. You'll get more Jay White versus Juice at Fighting Spirit than you would, Okada versus Jay White with Gato. You know what I mean? Like, I think that could just be a nice nuanced way of doing it, and it will follow like sheep. We will follow that. Like, we won't think too hard about it.
It plays into Gato really well too, right? So Gato with Okada, like he jumped from Okada to Jay White, and like Jay White went on his crazy thing. Now Jay White was gone for a while, and he's all with Evil. It works really well with that too. It looks like Gato just jumps around from whoever he thinks is the best person for him to hitch his wagon to. Jay White looks like he has to work back and redeem himself. It's almost like an Okada story, but like an Evil Okada story. Also, Jay White hasn't really fallen off because they sure book him strong.
Yeah, no, they do for sure. One guy that they probably won't be booking strong is Yujiro Takahashi, the Tokyo Pimp. I mean,
I don't know why he's in this fucking tournament.
If it's not him, it's Fale. If it's not Fale,
it's
Tonga. If it's not Tonga, it's Loa. Like, it's just,
Yeah, but put Tama Tonga in here instead of Takahashi.
I think they're stateside and they can't get back.
How did Jay White get back in Kenta? They're in the same damn state.
I don't know. They figured it out.
Look, you see the totem pole right there, I think. But Fale is a really good example. Fale is a really good is a really good example. Like, he's been the, like, I don't know how you refer to his role, over the past few years, but he's been like the cool down guy, he's been but Fale is Fale. He comes in, he's huge, he's the general. He comes in with the cigars and
already sweating,
yeah, for sure. And I don't know, Yujiro, you get the impression I've never seen him have a good match. He had a match with Kazuchika Okada earlier this year, and he managed to bring Kazuchika Okada to his level. Bring him down to his level. I don't know what he brings, quite frankly, here, other than
I would have liked to see them split Yoshihashi and Yano. I feel like they always block those two together. Like, I feel like it's consistently those two are in the same block. I would have liked them to, like, Yoshihashi's not my favorite guy to watch in the ring. I wouldn't pick him, but if you could have had him bring up the rear of the A block, you take care of any weaknesses in that A block. Yoshihashi can sometimes put on a kind of sort of like I don't know, like match that kind of sort of makes sense, I guess. It's a lot better than watching the Tokyo Pimp.
Anytime.
I think Yujiro and Naito back in 2008 won the junior tag championships, and I think they had a pretty decent match with Liger.
Well, I mean, you'd hope so.
Right.
They couldn't have brought in like Nagata, or I mean, like, there's a lot of guys. Maccabi.
I'm surprised they didn't go with Kojima, quite frankly.
Or Kojima, yeah.
Well, we got snubs.
Let's talk about some snubs. Go ahead, John.
All right, I want to rant a little bit, so I'll just say a name, and you guys can think about it until after I'm done, because I won't talk about him. But Sho's the biggest one for me, and I get the junior's equivalent of it, but he ain't no junior, and we all know that. But for me, it's Nagata. It has to be Nagata, right? And here's the reason why, is because Suzuki versus Nagata twice this year, twice already in a COVID year, have found themselves in a position to have two 4.5-star matches. Now, you can think of whatever you want about a rating system. What they are very good matches, right? 10 times in the last 15 years, these two have put on 3.5-star or better quality matches one-on-one. You have it twice this year. You can have it again at Wrestle Kingdom. You can have it for the Openweight Championship. But before we get there, we could have had number 3 in this series during the G1 Climax. And the fact that we're going to miss that for Yujiro Takahashi, I mean, it's as big of a snub as you're going to get. Right now, Suzuki leads the series 2-1 when they've met in the 5-star Grand Prix. This dates back to 2004, the first time that they met. Then they met in 2005, and then they met in 2013. So it's been a little bit of time since we've seen them, 7 years since we've seen this matchup in the G1. This match has also happened 3 times at Wrestle Kingdom. This is we talk Long Storm Bird. We talk about the same matches, Anthony, here in New Japan Pro Wrestling year over year. Nagata versus Suzuki, for any reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
I want it on my television. You had an opportunity in the G1 Climax this year, and you decided to pass on it for the Tokyo Pimp, Mr. Warren Hayes.
I agree. Anthony, what about you? Do you feel anyone has been snubbed in regards?
Yeah, I have two also.
Okay.
Mostly because John named I had four. John named two of them. So why is it in 2019 we make this great big grand exception in the same year that we have the best of the Super Juniors in the G1? We are okay with the storyline that juniors maybe can compete on the same level, so we put Shingo and Will Ospreay on there. So explain to me why Hiromu Takahashi, who was in the New Japan Cup, and there is no best of the Super Juniors this year, and the Bone Soldier, why are these two not involved in this tournament? There's no best of the Super Juniors. That division doesn't need building, but at the same time, like I get it. I guess Will Ospreay and Shingo are technically still juniors, but I kind of consider them transitional heavies now. I don't really understand why you don't have the other two in this tournament. I think that you could have left out, like, how many times do we really need to see Yoshihashi come through this and do nothing? Why do we need the Tokyo Pimp in here? If you're trying to pivot, like John has said multiple times, they're trying to pivot with your best, like, put your best foot forward, put those two guys in there. They're part of your top, 6 or 7, 8 talents. Put them in there. Have them match up. You already got all of LIJ and Block B. Fuck it. Put Takahashi in there with it. Make it a shit show. I mean, come on. Why not? It'd be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, I mean, my snubs have been covered. Basically, outside of maybe going over and being like, hey, how come Moxley's not there? But he's got a heavyweight championship somewhere else. So
we would have had Miro in this too if it wasn't for COVID, man. We would have had Miro and Moxley in this tournament for sure.
We could have had Carl Anderson back.
Could have had Carl Anderson back. Would have had not Luke Gallows. What's he going by now?
Doc Gallows.
This is his old name. Doc Gallows. Thank you.
Well, I mean, again, we're sort of complaining with our bellies full to a certain extent, right? It's like we're saying we're hungry, but we just stuffed out. Our faces are stuffed with great talent. But it's still interesting to talk about who we didn't think who should have made it or not. So those are pretty much.
If I can just toss in there, I like the fact that they're getting away from juniors and they're going back to separation. Okay. Again, I think for COVID being what it was and coming back and garnering the interest, so it made a lot of sense for me for New Japan Cup, right? But as much as we pivot into that contingency, we got to get things back on track now to finish out the rest of the year with whatever storylines we started with 2 years ago, Nova Gato, right? And that's where the G1 comes into play. So then to throw in a Takahashi, to throw in a Nishimori, to throw a Desperado in there, and expect me as a fan to look at that the same way that I look at New Japan. They conditioned me that way, and there's a reason I watch Dragon Gate, right? So it's one of those things where I think that just from a historical standpoint, them going back to heavies being heavies and juniors being juniors falls back in line with trying to get the trains back on track now that they've kind of been back for a little while.
That's a fair point. And Best of Super Juniors is just 5 months away, which feels like any other year that would feel like a lot, but based on how 2020 has been the longest and shortest year ever, that's really not that far away. I can take that. That's a good point.
I'm going to say one thing about Sho. Yo's injury is probably the best thing that happened to him.
Yeah. Which
is unfortunate for Yo, don't get me wrong, but if dropping the titles, moving away from it, I don't. It's really been a series of unfortunate events for Yo, but a series of very fortunate events for Sho. So
for show or like for show?
For show.
It's for show, faux show, right?
He keeps saying Tokyo Pimp, so I assumed he was saying for show.
But that being said, since we're still on the subject of the Tokyo Pimp, Nick Wolf left a super chat. Thank you, Nick, saying as long as Peter is with Yujiro, that's what he said.
It's part of it too.
Yeah.
She hasn't been around, so we'll see what happens. Want to say hello to
No.
Sepha, Andrew Huntley, and Mr. Fretz, who are all in the chat. Good to see everyone. Oh, and DGMC is here as well. Hello, DGMC. So in Block A, we talked about we still have to talk nonetheless about Will Ospreay, and I know there's I know there's part of us that doesn't really want, but he is going to be nonetheless, I feel, a big part of the A block experience this year. I mean, we can complain about New Japan just ignoring everything that's going on, whatever, but the fact is that he's here. He is going to factor into the block. How much? Let's start with you, John. How much do you think Will Ospreay is going to? Because there's a lot of people who are saying this is his year. He's going to win. And honestly, for my part, despite everything that happened, I still would not pick Will Ospreay to win the block or win the G1 this year. My pick at least for Block A would still be Shingo. What kind of part do you think Will Ospreay is going to play this year, John?
I think he will be top, 40 or top 4, maybe 40%. Like he'll be in the 4th, 5th, somewhere in that range. I don't think he's gonna win. I don't think it's his year. I think the win for him is coming back and being allowed to wrestle in Japan right now, right? I think that's the win for him. And and read between the lines there. But if we're going to talk about him, let's talk about him. The cat's put on 35 pounds while being in quarantine, and it looks like he did it the right way. So he's coming back to establish himself as a heavyweight. And I look at the G1 and I look for an opportunity for him to establish himself as a heavyweight. That's the part of Ospreay that we have yet to see. And until they establish that, it doesn't matter how much you like the guy's offense. He's not going to get the IWGP push that you're looking for if they don't accomplish that first step. And that they can do that through the G1 and shit. They can do that through the G1 and then have him win the damn thing. But until you establish him as being a heavyweight contender, a heavyweight threat, him versus Ospreay on the last night is going to tell us whether or not he's ready to take that step into heavyweight for real this time. They got to get away from him going back and forth, and they have enough right now in the junior heavyweight to not have to draw from him moving forward. He went out of his way during quarantine to make sure that when he came back, there were no questions to be asked whether or not he was a heavyweight or not. Does his offense change? Does he add to it? Do we see more rest holds out of him? Do we see more psychology, more ground and pound type of wrestling versus his aerial high fly, which I assume will still be there and be a great margin of his offense, but will we see that diminish over time? These are the questions I have about Will Ospreay, none of which I really care to think about because screw that guy. He's a bit of a dickhead. He is a dickhead. With that said, we got to break him down, and he's coming back in good form. I expect a good showing out of him, but now I don't see him doing anything of any significance other than setting himself up either for a championship shot against Minoru or finding himself in some type of storyline that gets him a tag team title shot, and they're going to start his heavyweight journey out there. One of those two things.
Anthony, I know a lot of people are banking, looking at the cards and looking at the final night again of the G1, and it's Okada versus Ospreay. It's third build. It's still not, we're still I think he has top billing one night with Ibushi, and then second to top billing with Jay White, and then another one with Goto, I believe. It's not that they don't see anything in him, but I don't know. I'm not feeling it.
I mean, I think that they can go a Sonata type route with him. We get all super excited about Sonata every year. Not necessarily this tournament. He does well in the New Japan Cup, but we get excited with Sonata. Sonata is not really often top billed, but as they build him, or as they've built him over the years, and then all of a sudden decided Evil was the one for whatever reason. As they've built him over the years, you just see Sonata slowly would pick up some pretty big wins. him being like that match on the last night being the third card with third on the card with Okada. They've got to like to John's credit, you have to build his heavyweight story at some point. He's got to pick up some wins over these guys. Is he going to beat Ibushi in a main event? I mean, maybe. Probably not going to beat Jay White. Could he finally get his win against Okada? Sure. And that's a great story because he's never beat Okada. He's gotten really close a lot of times. He's not beat Okada before. You got to build him somewhere. We also have to get used to what he looks like. He's going to wrestle different. He's got 35 pounds on him. That's a lot of freaking weight. And we saw, you can go look at old Kenny Omega and how just very Prince Devitt like he was when he first got into Japan and was working the juniors. And then that boy got thick and he wrestles differently. Yeah. Sure, he still flies a little bit, but Kenny's a striker now. He's a striker with some really, really dynamic suplexes and some powerful offense, and he can just get in the air if he needs to. What is Ospreay going to look like? That's the story of this tournament. Not if his body's going to look that significantly different. Maybe he gets some. He'll get a high-profile win. He might just get the Okada win. He's getting a high-profile win or two.
Yeah,
but I don't think he's a contender even. I don't even think he's top 40. I think he's smack in the middle.
I think, like John said, I think he already won by coming back to wrestle in New Japan.
Yeah. He should be happy with what you get and put over who they tell you to put over, and put over Jeff Cobb, even though Jeff Cobb won't sign with Japan long term.
Let's talk about Block B a little bit. We've been going on Block A. Block B here, of course. You got the ace of New Japan who's in here. This is clearly, instantly a favorite to win. You have the champion Naito, just because of the fact that he's holding the belts. There's we feel there might be forces against him. However, John feels like this might be the time, to sort of break that stigma that goes along with being a champion entering the G1. Outside of that, well, you have two high-profile Bullet Club members in Kenta and Evil, and you have the King of Pro Wrestling who is in this block here, John. The king of pro. He earned the time. He didn't wake up one day and say, "Hey guys, print this on a T-shirt for me." He earned it. Toru Yano, the king of professional wrestling, the king, not the squire, not the duke. No, the king. He is in Block B, John. How is he not winning?
Preach it to the rafters, Warren. Because of politics. That's why he's not winning.
Fuck!
Right? That's right. Kadani over there at Bushi Road and his mountain of money saying that Toru Yano, the man of the people, the plebes.
Change.org. Shigabayashi, Jesus Christ, we're sending it to... You're going to... My God.
Unbelievable. That's how bureaucratic red tape bull. No, I love Block B. I do. I love this for a lot of different reasons. But the biggest one for me is that I really do think it comes down to, I think it boils down to two people in my eyes. And it's not Naito and it's not Sonata. Although I think that they're going to be great through this. I think LIJ's had a lot of storytelling up to this point. You need to start getting some other people involved. And because of that, I said I want to take Ibushi in Block A. I would like to sit here and pitch Tanahashi, the ace. Right there. Go Ace.
Go Ace.
Go Ace. Shirt. Thank you, sir. Because of everything with him and Ibushi and the stories that they've been telling, and ever since the Kenny drama, and then he wins the G1, and then he goes on to win the championship, and then Ibushi ends up winning the G1, and then Ibushi goes on and doesn't win the championship, but then they win the tag team, and you got this whole story that they've been telling him, and it's still an underarching story because really Golden Lovers is the long story arc that they hopefully will get back to. But this is what makes Tanahashi so compelling, and with him being out on break for as long as he had, this is the healthiest Tanahashi we've had in many, many years, right? I don't think he's been this healthy since 14, 15, maybe. So we've got a fresh Tanahashi, you got a fresh Ace, and a mid-card Okada. And you're sitting here and you got a pre-installed storyline with your former tag team champion. Oh, by the way, who's Ibushi? There's a lot that you can do here, and I really hope that they pull the trigger on that, although we don't like to see the same matches in New Japan, right? With that said, you have an opportunity with Kenta for him to go on and win the G1, then come back stateside and beat Moxley for the U.S. Championship, and then bring that back to Wrestle Kingdom, and you have an opportunity to unify a belt here that's cursed and get rid of it forever. And if there's one person in New Japan Pro Wrestling whose character could pull that off, well, my goodness, is it not Kenta written all over it? That's an interesting story to tell. I don't think they would do Double Dash +1, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think we would get that at Wrestle Kingdom. But, man, you got Kenta versus Naito again, and you got it with him being a champion this time. And maybe he unifies the IC with the US, then he just comes back with the IC at a later date and comes and champions everything that Triple H said that he couldn't do stateside. Well, that's a hell of a story to tell. I don't think they're going to do that, but I think it would be fun for that to happen.
Fun story.
I do think that he does win the championship, and I do think that there's a compelling case for him to win Block B. And I think of everybody that's not named Tanahashi, I think Kenta's your clear favorite in the Block B, at least in my opinion.
Anthony, what do you think?
I think that we are going to add to the tragic tale of the King of Pro Wrestling. And what I mean by that is Yano is going to beat Naito.
Sure.
He's going to stop Naito's streak. When do they face each other? What night is that? Probably 3 or 4 nights in.
I'll find
Sounds
out.
about right. It's night 16, actually.
Night 16. Naito's going to be somewhere near the top of that block, and Yano's going to win because that is what his purpose is. It'll be wonderful, just like it was when he beat Moxley last year. Naito won't emote the same way, but he does hate Yano. We've seen that a lot of times. He gets super frustrated with him. And all I care about in Block B is why the fuck New Japan doesn't give a title shot to the man that has earned it over many years now. He won't win the block. I mean, I'm with John. I think Kenta's the favorite to win this block. I'm really just talking about Yano and how amazing he is.
Sure.
Kenta's the favorite out of this block, and there'll be some fine matches out of it, whatever. But Yano's definitely going to win, and I'm gonna get increasingly frustrated that he doesn't get a title shot. Just like in a different sense, Suzuki will have a good showing in Block A, not win, and will probably retire from New Japan without really ever getting a serious IWGP title chance. Yano's is different, though. I just wonder how they're ever going to tie that story up, because they'll go back to it at some point, but how and when?
At KOPW in November.
Ugh.
The Toriano show.
Yeah, the Toriano show. That's exactly.
Produce show.
Hey, you know what? I will say this though. I do think Goto is a good dark horse for the B block. I don't think they'll give it to Tana, but I just feel like Goto's always there lingering. He did last year. Wouldn't be surprising to me if we get like a Ibushi versus Goto final, or even a Jay White versus Goto final for the G1. I think Goto's a good dark horse, but I think they need to pull the trigger on Kenta for this block.
Well, I mean, Goto last year was part of that 4-way tie, right? He was part of the he was part of the Final Four with Moxley and Naito and White. I mean, that's pretty good company if he wants to. You guys know how important momentum is in wrestling, right? Can that momentum carry him forward into? I mean, I agree. As far as a dark horse pick goes, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. If you want to go full 2020 on us, New Japan, you make Yoshihashi win the block, right? But then absolutely, I lose all hope.
Right.
However, you know, of course that was a joke. I think Kenta is a good pick if they decide to go with Ibushi, which is John's pick. That being said, I do believe that inevitably Tanahashi is the guy who's going to win it because of that built-in story we were talking about. But look, here's the thing. My record in predicting New Japan tournaments is shit. It is bottom basement garbage shit, right? As far as except for the New Japan Cup US, that I scored a perfect 100 on it. It is
you nailed
it
that.
is officially my favorite tournament in all of New Japan. I got every bracket, everything. Perfect. Anywho, I think two of the compelling stories here within the block, three if you want to count Juice Robinson's attire, the LIJ, all the LIJ members are all in this group.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something interesting. That would, or at least former in the case of Evil, you know, the tensions are all there. But I think one of the big stories in Naito's B block here is going to be establishing contenders for him. Because I don't think he's going to win the block because of the championships. I think this is going to be more of an opportunity to create contenders for him. Like, I do believe that Yano is going to. I do believe Yano is going to defeat him because that's what Yano does, sure. And then he never cares about cashing in his going to the booker and saying, "Hey, I want my match." He just doesn't care about that. So I think that's one thing that's going to happen. You want to continue talking about Yoshihashi's Cinderella 2020? Have him score a surprise win on Naito, you know, and shake our boy up a little bit, make him a little more worried. I don't know what the positioning of the matches are, of these two matches are on the cards, but it seems to me it would be really interesting if, you know, these two matches sort of rattle Naito a little bit, and he comes in full force for the end. There's something very interesting here. He could even lose to Kenta. You know, there's a lot of really interesting stuff. You'd think you'd think they're going to have him defend the title once before Wrestle Kingdom after this, right? So yeah, they have to create a contender somewhere.
Yeah, there's like what power struggle comes between G1 and
yeah, I think so.
You have power struggle and KOPW.
Yeah,
they're still doing both. November, December.
But I don't know if they're going to do both or not, but maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if they turn it pretty quick.
I would imagine they keep Power Struggle. That's usually where they do one of their top matches. But I mean, I guess main event last year was Jericho versus Evil, wasn't it?
Yeah, that Jericho right. Versus Evil, right? Then you had Jay versus Naito for the IC title, right? I think that happened too.
No, Jared. Yes, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I like Kenta. So Kenta Naito ended the last night, right? Here's what I like. Because it is a shortened year, so this is good. I like Kenta doing everything human, like dominating Naito for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I forget how long the match. I think it's a half an hour, right? 30-minute match. Dominates him. Can't beat him. Gets the draw. Still wins the block. Right? And now he's got to go on and beat Ibushi in the battle of the bowl haircuts between the two of them, and then continue on to then go to Wrestle Kingdom, and now he's got to do it on the biggest stage of them all. And pretty much the entire time, now Kenta gets to say, I owned you, now I got 60 minutes to hurt you instead of just 30. I think that's a nice way that you could present this. Not to mention they've already met earlier in the year, so there's already revenge on Kenta's side because he lost to Naito for the title in like February, right? So... or New Beginnings, I forget when. So I just think that you can continue those arcs. So,
yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense as well. It's funny because it seems to me the talking. Well, okay, let's talk because I was like, it seems to me the talking points for Block B are always sort of turn around, Yoshihashi and Juice and Yano, but. What are we gonna see with our boy Sonata? What are they doing with our boy Sonata this year? Right? I mean, it's been Sonata's year for the past 4 years. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I hope that, because I do think it's a placeholder year for him, unfortunately. I want him to be the cornerstone of LIJ.
Yeah.
Right. Shingo's pretty much 1 foot out the door, right? Evil's already gone as tag team partner. Hiramu's chilling. Welcome back, and he's the craziness, and he's really the one with the love fest with Naito. Sonata's got to be your soldier, right? He's got to be the one that solidifies the lines, and he's got to be the one that goes out and recruits the new members, right? And he's got to be the one that blazes the trail for LIJ moving forward out of 2020 into 2021. And you got to start that sooner rather than later. So they continue that. He kind of builds the faction up underneath of him. He's the one that kind of begins to be the face and rise through the ranks a lot like Zack Sabre Jr. was doing in Suzuki-gun before Taichi came out of fucking nowhere. And, you give him that story, and then you let him champion his main event run sometime back third of 2021, right? But for now, keep him on ice, but you solidify LIJ with him.
What do you think, Anthony? What's up with Sonata?
So part of me wonders, because this is just what I do with wrestling, part of me wonders if the reason why Sonata is in this placeholder year is actually not so much that it's a placeholder year for him with New Japan. Maybe he's gone. Like maybe they're not getting a commitment from him as far as where he's going to be in January after New Year's Dash. Maybe he's 1 foot out the door himself. Maybe he's heading over to North America to work for Vince McMahon or work for Tony Khan. He's someone that would work really well over here. I've always thought that he was kind of going to be one of the guys, one of their guys that they like that's at the door. And it is awful weird that they just pivoted to Evil out of nowhere. I think Sonata will have a good showing. He's going to have good matches. Him versus Zack Sabre Jr., guess what? It's going to rule because that match always rules when they wrestle each other. But I think he's going to finish in the middle. I think that at least for now, they're done with Sonata. They won't have him at the bottom of this because they're not going to have him below Yoshihashi. He might finish below Yano. With that, I mean, like whatever, it's Yano. He'll finish where he finishes, and it doesn't really matter. But I think Sonata's going to be middle, maybe even like the bottom part of the middle. It just feels like something's weird with him, as if maybe they're not as committed to him, or he's not as committed to New Japan.
It's weird because every time we think we have the Sonata push figured out, it just they just.
Well, we never could figure out the Naito push either. So
good point. That's a very good point. And
we know they like him.
Oh yeah, and so does the audience. And people are split on Sonata, right? He's nonetheless a controversial wrestler.
Yep.
Yeah.
So who have we got? Are we pretty like? It's hard to. It's a tough one here. We've been talking about Kenta. I've talked about Tanahashi, but to me, it makes sense if Ibushi goes over on Block A, which I don't think is going to happen. It's a weird one. I'm not much of a betting man. I'm more of a I don't know what to do kind of man.
I think that I can see I can see LIJ Bullet Club being the finals here, because that is the story that they started when they started back up from COVID, was Evil obviously defecting over to Bullet Club. It's not going to be like, it's too obvious to have an Evil versus Shingo or a Sonata versus Shingo. Shingo versus Kenta, why not? You get Shingo, kind of the third guy of LIJ that maybe isn't as committed to LIJ as he was before, versus Kenta, who is depends on how they feel about him, whether he's like a quasi leader or like the third guy in Bullet Club. You still have some soldiers from those two factions facing off for each other. And then if you get Kenta going over LIJ, Kenta versus Naito in the Tokyo Dome main event, assuming that they're able to have fans. They hate Kenta. They cannot stand Kenta. All the heat in the world. And so if they decide to have Naito lose in Wrestle Kingdom in the Tokyo Dome, guess who's the best person to eat all that heat? Kenta.
What do you think, John?
I like it. I conservatively, the thing is that it's so much fun to go on. Like, I got this whole thing built up for Goto and how you do it and how it makes sense, and you go through Jay White, and I got, I can take these things anywhere.
I love Goto winning.
Me too. And it's due. For him to get back into the IWGP Championship picture. That's not the point, though. Point is that the quickest way between two line is a straight, or whatever that line is. Quickest way between 2 points is a straight line, and that's typically the route that New Japan takes, especially on the road to Wrestle Kingdom here. So to me, it's either Ibushi versus Tanahashi, or it's Ibushi versus Kenta. I know people are going to be upset with Ibushi winning it because it feels like he's won a lot of secondary stuff since he's committed to New Japan, but it's kind of the way they do things. So
Yep.
I'm going to stick with Ibushi versus Kenta. I like face versus heel in any degree, and you get that with those two. There's a story arc built in. You can still have Ibushi versus Tanahashi in the co-main later. Give me Kenta for the W of the G1, and he does it against Ibushi.
Yeah, I like that too because it also gives you. Sorry, Warren, I know you're.
No, that's
in
fine.
there,
Go
but
ahead.
you also give Ibushi the option to get revenge about like he lost opening night last year in Dallas to debuting Kenta too. So
yeah,
that's some. Oh god, that match ruled. Awesome to see live. No big deal. Anyway, that match was great, and Kenta beat his ass in that match. It was really, really bad, real stiff. So you could have Ibushi get his revenge and start 2020 or 2021 fresh, where Japan loves to move past things and do like what they're going to do and say, COVID was last year, Olympics are this year. Also, here's Ibushi versus Naito. Hope they don't die.
I'm kind of digging the idea of Ibushi. Like, I really do think that as we have to think Wrestle Kingdom main event nonetheless, and I think there is yen in Naito versus Ibushi, right?
Yeah,
but
for sure.
What if we do Shingo and Kenta for the block winners, and Kenta wins the G1? Kenta has the briefcase. They usually have them defend it once, right?
Right.
Now, what if before the defense, Ibushi sort of settles what he has to settle with Tanahashi? Remember, Tanahashi, this stuck with me, says, Ibushi, I need you to become a god, right? When they were doing when they were tag champs, it was like, I need you to become a god. And Ibushi's like, for you, I will become a god. Well, what if he becomes a god when it's time to rip Tanahashi's face off, figuratively speaking, of course, and then beats Tanahashi, moves on to Kenta, beats Kenta for the briefcase, which would be a first, I do believe.
It would absolutely be a first.
And then we get to Wrestle Kingdom, and you have your main event there. Because as much as, I don't know, man, as much as Kenta is a fantastic heel and great, is he Wrestle Kingdom main event material?
Well,
and I'm talking about 2020/2021 Kenta, right? If we were talking about 2014 Kenta, we'd be like, God damn, man, of course. But
I mean, 2019 G1 Kenta was definitely main event Tokyo Dome. Like he was pretty damn fantastic. This year, I guess we don't know.
It's hard.
He's pretty
hard
good
to
this
say.
year.
Yeah.
He was very good, and then he was even good during COVID. His social media game is the best in New Japan right now.
This is true.
And he's having a great New Japan OA run as well. So so you get the Western exposure, which is always a plus. Here's the thing, though. So again, it goes back to you have to like this dynamic, which again can be blurred a little bit, but it's good guy versus bad guy. Yep. And that, at the end of the day, will sell better than anything else you put together storyline-wise. And when you have someone like Naito, who is the most popular wrestler in Japan to this day, not across the world, in Japan, he is the #1 favorite wrestler of everybody.
Mm-hmm. Except for that one town that hates him.
And then there's Kenta, who
just hate.
Isn't exactly loved by the New Japan Pro Wrestling fans, right? He's kind of looked at as an outsider. He's a guy that left. He's a guy that then went to NXT and was going to make it over there as a Hideo. Then he came back with his tail between his legs. Before he even goes to New Japan, he goes back to Noah, right? And he does all this little stuff before finally signing and making an impact at New Japan. And when he came back, although he did very good in Texas, he went back to Japan and he kind of fell a little flat. Yep. And he had this little aura win, and then he went against the wrestler Shibata, right? And that's no bueno, right? We don't like that as New Japan fans. There's a reason they call that guy the wrestler. And so he builds this heat, and now he's got Jay White, who, let's be honest, is really more, I know we say this a lot, but he's really more the Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's an anti-hero, right? He's so good at being bad that we love him, right? Yes. And because of that, is he really a heel? Because New Japan Pro Wrestling fans know that they kind of match Westerners a little bit with regards to he's too good to hate, right? We respect him too damn much at what he does. He's just too good to hate. But Kenta, well, he's a piece of crap, right? And so now if he champions Jay White and takes over Bullet Club, and now you really build that heat, right? And he takes out the Golden Star Boy in Ibushi in the 5-star, and he beats up Naito while he does it. And now he gets to go on and talk all this trash for 3 months and kind of just rub the face of whoever he wants at KOPW or Power Struggle or wherever it is and build upon that even more.
Sure.
Win the U.S. Championship with Moxley and go on.
I'm sold.
It's there, man. I think there's dollars in Kenta as the bad guy in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Yen. I believe there's yen in that.
Yes.
We already got Kenta versus Naito earlier this year, though, didn't we?
We sure did, but it just tells more of that short-term story. Again, it's a placeholder year, right? You're not doing anything crazy. You're not going to burn any of your big stories, so why not revisit the well?
It'd work. It'd be okay.
Yep. Absolutely would work.
Yeah, I could buy that. I can buy that. Just like I can buy Kota Ibushi coming out of nowhere and challenging for the briefcase and winning it and being like,
you can make the case Shingo to win.
And then
can you imagine 38-year-old Shingo at Wrestle Kingdom against Naito? There's money there too.
You could always do more story. You could further the story of Naito losing all of his friends too.
Sure.
I mean, whatever they're gonna do, like as we see this tournament go on, we're gonna see who they think the fans are gonna be most appreciate as their main event. They are going to do something that the fans want to see in the Tokyo Dome that keeps people excited and is like a makeup reset for, hey, COVID fucked everything up, but 2021 is gonna rule. Here you go. But if you do that, it makes more sense that it would be. It makes way more sense that it would end up being Ibushi versus Naito in the main event.
Something about Kota Ibushi winning the briefcase after and saying, G1, I don't need your stinking G1. You know, that'd be.
Is he Dexter's from Dexter's Laboratory?
Hello, I am going to invent a machine to take away your briefcase.
Canadians don't actually know what Japan is.
And then
we've discovered that.
And then it turns out that his sister is actually Tanahashi, and he comes and ruins all these machines.
Tanahashi is Didi. I can see it.
Tanahashi as Didi would work. They have the hair.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Well, there you go, folks. I went over the G1. Regardless of anything we discussed here, I am willing to bet. I said I wasn't a betting man, but I'm willing to bet $50 that nothing of what we discussed here is going to happen because they always manage to just like stun us and be like, all right, whatever we had planned, there's no point. But that's what makes New Japan. That's one of the things that makes New Japan so goddamn special. Before we go, I don't know, usually we say, hey guys, tell us what you have, where they can follow us on social media, but you fucks are all done, so I don't know. Where can we send you Amazon gift cards?
Always trying to get my address, Warren, for the last time. No.
I know, but Anthony, you're hanging around. You do a sports podcast now.
I do, yeah. So I've transitioned over to professional sports. We just launched a network this last week called Shooting the Sports-ish. You can follow that at Shoot Sports-ish. We have a lot of stuff going on. There actually, some of the guys on the team are recording NFL Weekend Week 1 recap tonight. That'll be up tomorrow. Some familiar voices that you guys will know, and Mags and Tanner over at Headlock Talker. They do a soccer podcast that comes out tomorrow. Football. We have UFC. We actually are going to have daily wrestling starting in the next week or two as well that I will not be doing, but we have someone doing that in the mornings over on YouTube. I don't know how to link the YouTube. There's not enough subscribers yet. But at Shoot Sports-ish, follow us if you're into that. We have all sorts of stuff going on. And I'm still on Twitter, at Tony G on Sports, at Tony on Sports. What is my name? Tony on Sports.
I'm good. Tony G works for me, though. It sounds like you're a
listen,
a 90s soft rock flautist. It sounds fantastic.
Do you understand why this happened? Right. Let me explain to you why this happened. First day of school this year, my students go, "Hey, Mr. Suter." I said, "What's up?" "I heard your podcast." And I said, "Oh, no." "Oh, uh-huh." And they said, "Yeah. Do you sound like Viagra?" And I said, Well,
yeah.
it's time to quit the podcast.
You do.
It's
You
time.
did. You hopped
It's
back.
time to quit. It's time to change my name.
I can get it
Gotta
for free,
go.
Mr. S.
And I was like, that was a different Anthony Suter, the composer you find on Google. Well, it wasn't me. They're like, it sounds just like you. And I was like, shut up, kid. You got an F today. Goodbye. Go away.
Don't be a snitch.
JPQ,
Yeah.
what's left of you?
You can find me at your local fishing hole because I'm retired, man. I'm hanging out, dude. I'm watching a lot of Joshi, going back through the archives of AJW right now. Some Gaia, some JWP, some old Triple Tail stuff, and Tajiri's Smash Wrestling. I'm doing a lot of soul searching, right, on my journey of getting a better understanding of Japanese wrestling as a whole. So I'm taking some time for myself right now, and wherever that leads one day, we'll find out. But for now, I'm retired. You can find me on Twitter at Big Paws on a Pup, just daily musings and such, and usually retweeting the Mr. Warren Hayes show. So,
Well, there you go. You haven't started a new podcast yet. I would suggest slow cooking.
ooh, I just had a brisket in the slow
There
cooker
you go.
just to piss off Anthony before the show
What
started.
the fuck is that?
There you go. Yep.
You crockpot cooked a brisket?
Yep. That was good too.
I bet it
No, it
was.
wasn't.
Good
It
for
was,
you for
wasn't it?
thinking out of
No,
the
it
box.
Thank you.
God, jeez, what are you making? Corned beef? What the fuck's wrong with you?
You don't make corned beef in a crock pot.
I don't know what you make. You don't make brisket out of it either.
My God, boys.
Corned beef is brisket.
We're going to
I
got to take this off the air. It's going to get dirty in a second here. It's going to get rough.
Right.
I wanted to, but thank you both of you guys for helping me start G1 season this year, because there was a lot of withdrawal. There's a lot of withdrawal that's going to happen, but this was good. This was fun. Thank you everyone for joining us. Everyone who joined us live. If you liked what you watched, please do consider giving the video a thumbs up or a like if you're listening to this, or a review, whatever, if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast application. Always appreciated, just as every viewer, watcher, listener of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show is very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Anthony and JPQ, for coming over. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you both so much. Thank you all, everyone. We'll see you next time.